And we are taking a closer look at that market action with Robert Towell from Sasfin Securities. Thank you so much for your time, Rob. Of course, the big thing that is on our minds today is, of course, the attempted assassination on former U.S. President Donald Trump, seeming that there are, tensions are high in that political landscape. How are markets digesting this? Are they digesting this at all today?
Well, I think they've been relatively stable, which I think is positive. Obviously, you see U.S. politics, really starting to get aggressive and violent, from when Trump left office as the last president. He's been relatively violent rhetoric, the whole way through, and obviously now, coming to a point now. But I think the market at this stage has been relatively stable, and I think it's positive. So I don't think the market's going to react too much to what happened. And obviously, because he wasn't really injured too badly, so I don't think there'll be too much into it at the moment. You did see gold spike, and you also saw some of the cryptocurrency spike as well. And we'll see if they can hold their levels. But otherwise, the markets are relatively stable.
It's quite interesting, Rob, that, you talk about gold spiking and cryptocurrency spiking, because now it seems that there are bits of a Trump win there in the U.S. Do you think markets are maybe at a point of seeking safety and kind of staying away from risk at this point? How are you reading that?
I think equity markets, especially the US equity market, is looking relatively good still and strong. So I don't think people will be rushing for safety at this stage. I think that, yes, there is the US election, which is now really getting interesting. And, that will be in by the end of the year. But I think at the moment, markets are relatively firm still, especially in the US, and Europe not looking too bad. China, we see are battling. You saw their numbers this morning. Weak numbers across the board, weak consumer sentiment. So China really is going to be the driver, and that's really a weak component of world markets. But US market is relatively firm, and we still see the tech guys and the AI still really firm across world markets.
Yeah, and actually just, let's dig deeper into China. Their GDP did miss expectations for the second quarter. Retail sales also were lower than what markets had anticipated. And we saw quite mixed data in terms of the trade data that came out on Friday. We did see imports falling instead of growth that was expected, but actually exports are growing more than expected. Is that still speaking to a still struggling Chinese consumer in terms of struggling to eke out demand? And when do you think we could see a bottom here?
I think you have to take a look at property. Property is very weak still, and housing prices came down again in China. So the consumers under pressure from their asset base, which is their housing base. They're not getting any return from their housing, and then obviously they're starting to keep money aside and start to save. So they're not spending at this stage. They're not feeling wealthy. They don't feel like their assets are moving up in value, and therefore they're not spending. So I think the property market is really the key. The Chinese market actually sits, the government sits this week in the plenum, which is, which they meet every few months to set out their 5-year strategies. And I think that'll be mainly around social welfare, and it'll also be around property. So not so much around consumption. And obviously, we need the consumption to come through from the Chinese market. So I think social welfare and property we will see come out, and maybe they do. I don't think a lot of people are looking for too much to come out of this meeting this week from the Chinese, but maybe they're surprised and put a really big package through to the property index and to help property. And I think that would then, give a trigger to the Chinese economy. But we'll have to wait and see, how this meeting goes this week.
Let's cross over to the States again, Rob, before we go into some of the company news that came out of the JSE, because second quarter earnings are up. And I'm wondering if the expectation is for, the economic momentum to kind of solidify still strong earnings there or not?
I think on the tech side, you're still going to see very strong earnings. I think you're going to see earnings per share, probably up 30-40% on the big tech side. And obviously a little bit, muted on the rest of the market, probably looking between 5 and 7% for the rest of the economy. So, I think a lot of the industrial side, we'll have to see what those CEOs say about where they feel the economy is going. If those were positive and saying we still see growth on the lower side, I think that'll be very positive for the US economy and those and for the slightly smaller industrial companies. And you'll carry on seeing the AI theme carry on going forward. This is not ending at this stage. And, the growth that you're seeing in NVIDIA and in the chip companies is still here to stay for at least 18 months, I would say.
All right. Well, Bell Equipment actually came out with an announcement. There was a joint announcement there between Bell Equipment and IAB. IAB has clearly stated its intention of buying the rest of the shares that it does not own on Bell Equipment. Of course, there we know that another delisting is on the way for the JSE. Of course, quite bad news. But we have seen the shares of Bell Equipment rallying today. What do you make of this acquisition, and also what it means for the JSE at this point?
Well, another loss for the JSE, especially an industrial company again in South Africa, and a manufacturing company. ARP say that there's no benefit to be listed because you need to raise money, and that's one of the benefits of being listed, so you can raise cash. And they're saying it's very difficult to do. If you look at Pick n Pay, they're raising 4 billion, so you can raise money on the exchange. So I don't think that's really a reason to be stepping away. But they're paying a very big premium, 71% premium. So the share was up 45%. It was very interesting to note, though, that last week the share was up 17% before this announcement. So last week, maybe one or two people, got a sniff of the deal because it was up 17% last week, and then the announcement came out this morning and it was up 45%. A good business, a good family-run business. They actually the family from Bell Equipment staying in, and I think two of the largest shareholders, I think Peregrine, are staying invested, but all small minority shareholders will be bought out at, I think it's 53 Rand odd. Unfortunately, another delisting.
Yeah, indeed. Rob, just before we get to the stock picks that did come from your peers, Sappi made a voluntary announcement today saying that they are selling their Lannekan mill. I didn't see a lot of action there. Is it because it was well known and basically their strategy has been clear for quite a while now?
Yes, I think it's actually a good announcement. It's not a huge sum of money.
Yeah.
I think it's 40 million euros. They tried to sell that last year, and they actually had initially sold that asset, and then that asset fell through. And because that asset fell through and that sale fell through, they actually closed that mill, and now they've sold the land and the mill together. So I think it's very good, not so much on how much they got for it, but it takes away a lot of costs that they've been having to push into that asset for no return. So that's going to go off the balance sheet. They're going to get some cash in. I think it's very positive for them, even though it's not a big number. It allows them to, put management's focus on where they're doing really well. So Sappi is one of the stocks that I really like, and I think can grow nicely from these levels. And that was a nice announcement from them today.
All right. Well, Rob, as I did say, before we head to your stock pick, let's reflect on some of the counters that have found favor with your industry peers.
So our stock pick is Omnia, which is very much a South African industrial asset. Their main business is chemicals, fertilizers, and explosives. And what we saw was quite a strong and resilient operating result, notwithstanding a very tough operating environment. So they've managed to sort of stabilize the fertilizer business. The explosives business, somewhat exposed to the mining cycle, but that looks resilient. They're doing a lot of work in international markets, so there looks like there's really good growth. We did see the share sort of re-rate on their update, and importantly, it's still come a large special dividend. So between the ordinary dividend and the special dividend, you're going to get about 10% of the share price back. So your entry price X, the dividend is still around 64 Rand, or maybe a little bit lower. I think it is teed up for good growth and a re-rating, along as we sort of gave an investment thesis earlier in terms of SA Inc. stocks. So you're getting the benefit of both of those.
So my stock pick for today is TransDigm. TransDigm is a holding company in the aerospace business. Their companies sell products that include things such as pumps and valves, motors and controls, ignition systems, and cockpit security systems. These products may sound simple, but they're often really highly engineered proprietary aircraft components, of which TransDigm is the sole supplier. So they're effectively a monopoly. And there's also very high barriers to entry in the aerospace industry. There's very strict regulatory approval to have products in aeroplanes. So TransDigm's a great business, basically a monopoly, high barriers to entry. It's one we like.
Well, Rob, let's get your thoughts on those counters. Let's start off with Omnia.
Omnia, so a good South African industrial business. and now one of the fewer ones left that's going to be left on the exchange.
Yeah.
A very good business. I think the chemical cycle hasn't bottomed yet, so I think chemical prices are still really weak, but it's paying a very good special dividend, and dividends just about 10%. If you own it within an RA or in a retirement pot where there's no dividend tax, I think it's something that you could definitely put into your portfolio and get that nice 10% dividend. Plus, you'll get growth going later. But I think on the chemical side, probably not yet. We haven't seen a recovery in chemical prices, so I don't think it'll be a growth asset to start just yet. I think you have to wait probably another few months.
What about Transdime? Is this one that you look at? And actually quite interesting because I think I remember sometime during the week last week, somebody else chose a counter that is in aerospace that makes parts for airplanes, seeming that this is quite a sector that some people are interested in.
Yeah, so Andrew there was actually a colleague of ours at Sasfin Wealth. So we do like Transdime. Aerospace we do like. Not so much the actual aircraft as in Boeing and Airbus, but the manufacturing parts that go into that. So it's a very good business long term. It's quite a sticky business, and as was mentioned, they engineer very high-end parts, which is not easy to replicate. You can't just get a part into an airplane that hasn't been cleared. So it's a very good business. It's got growth going forward, and quite defensive at the same time. So Transdime, we like. It's in our model portfolio currently, and it's one I'd add to the portfolios.
All right. What else are you adding your stock pick for today?
So I still like Novo Nordisk, which is made Wegovy, which is the diabetes drug and the fat drug, which everybody is taking at the moment. It's had a stellar run over the last year already. But you're starting to see auxiliary benefits from these drugs. So you're starting to see mental health benefits. You're seeing dementia getting reduced. So I think that it's just starting how good these drugs are and what they can do. So I think you can still add Novo Nordisk to your portfolio, and I still think you're going to get growth. You could add Eli Lilly, which makes the Pozin drug. Either of them are good, but for Novo Nordisk, we really like that, and we think there's still a lot of growth in that sector still.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rob. Really, really appreciate your insights. That was your midday market update with Sasfin Securities' Robert Towell.